Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Center for Justice and Law Spotlight Conversation series, where we talk about topics on health justice and law with guests. I'm Ellie Logelin.
And I'm Anthony Meng.
And we are students in the Health Justice and Advocacy class this semester. We are partnering with the CJL today, and our Spotlight Conversation is focusing on the topic of food justice, art, activism, and advocacy, with an overarching theme of immigrant and migrant and refuge help. Our conversation today is with Hayley Ball and Saba Andualem. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And so we've asked you to join us today because of the work that you both do at Urban Roots that assist the communities around here in the Twin Cities and basically assisting us in like a fight to have unlimited access to nature and healthy foods. And I will say you both inspire Ellie and I because of your mission and how you empower communities and the youth through nature, healthy food, and a sense of community. So just to ask, can you tell us about the work you're doing for the community and how your work connects to health and justice?
Of course. Should I just give a quick background maybe on who we are for folks? Also, I see names popping up and just want to say hi, Jametta.
Hey, girl.
Jametta is one of the incredible chefs that works with us and our youth, which Saba will talk a little bit about more later in ways that we engage our youth. But we are Urban Roots. And my name's Hayley Ball. I use she, her pronouns. I'm our executive director. And we are a youth development nonprofit on the east side of St. Paul. We empower youth through nature, healthy food, and community, like Anthony mentioned before. And so with our mission, we provide 80 youth, primarily who live or go to school on the east side, with meaningful paid job training internships in the areas of urban agriculture, conservation, natural resource career pathways, and food and cooking career pathways. So a lot of those inherently give us a lot of opportunities to weave like food justice and land access and food sovereignty and like environmental justice within our programming itself, and using those as a vehicle for youth to empower themselves over time. I hope my notifications aren't showing up on here. So those, that's primarily what we do. And the program names are Market Garden, Cook Fresh, and Conservation.
Awesome. One of the things about youth power is how it's able to like uproot and almost like organize. How do you tap into that potential with the?
Yeah. So, you know, like Hayley did a great job of just talking about all of our programming. We have like a 4-year model. So it's like they come as freshmen in high school and then kind of graduate the program when they're a senior. But then when they're done with that, they can come back as alumni. In that whole journey, a lot of the youth have a lot of say in what the programs look like. So the Cook Fresh program is the one that I manage. And that program, I would say, was like designed by like the interns who are in it, and also like the community members that like they wanted to work with and the chefs they want to work with. And so there's a lot of autonomy like that in each of our programs, and just room for creativity and expression, I would say. And then in our alumni program, a lot of the interns get to choose their projects that they get to work on and choose folks in the community that they want to engage with to really create deep, meaningful relationships with people who are neighbors and like community activists, or, you know, people who are in the fields they want to get into after work here. So there's a lot of youth autonomy and choice in all of the process here.
Yeah, and I think it also stems through like even the way that we conduct our programming, for example. So youth have a voice and choice in the type of programming we're offering, like Saba had mentioned, but also creating community stewardship projects, but then going as deep to how our evaluations are done for progress for youth, not only in their content learning areas, but also like their social emotional development. Because we need to focus on youth as a whole,
Yeah.
and viewing them as a whole person, and as wonderful as they are, to like help them succeed and figure out what they want to do next, and kind of what and help them like move forward with like their choice.
That's amazing. I love it. Oh my gosh.
I feel like that is such a great thing to focus on, and kind of going off of that, I know you guys have a great passion for just creating like equitable lifelong learning opportunities and providing those learning opportunities. So what about Urban Roots allowed you to carry out that passion and like continue pursuing your goals and passions that you have in life also while not burning out, and kind of seeing that throughout the pandemic and all of the different changing aspects of life now?
Like for the youth or for the
Ourselves?
Ourselves? I see.
Yeah,
that's a good question.
I mean, with nonprofit work, it can be, and I'm sure anybody who works within a smaller nonprofit or education themselves will tell you that it can be all consuming, because the most important part of our work, I would argue, would be relationships, whether it's with the youth themselves or community members that we're serving, or our partners that we work with. And I think it's being flexible and adaptive and responding specifically to and really listening to like what people tell you what they need, because inherently people know what they need for themselves, and learning how to like shift with that. So for example, what that looked like for us as an organization was we felt like a lot of the food that we had, we produce roughly 15,000 pounds of food each year from our sites, and a lot of it is cultural, because about 92% of our youth are from BIPOC communities. And a lot of it we sold kind of wholesale, and we did a farmer's market in Minneapolis, which we still have our stall at Mill City, but looking at different avenues where we can provide like really cool opportunities for youth to do programming, and also make sure like food stays within the community. So we now have a mobile farmer's market. It's a refrigerated transit van. And so we're a SNAP EBT authorized vendor. And then we're able to also offer a match through Market Bucks and Hunger Solutions. And so folks can match dollar for nutrition assistance dollars. But it's a really good way to like make sure we're getting out into community, like surveying them, like, are we here at the best time or best place? And like make sure we stay within and like make our community stronger in that sense. And also it's like what the youth are wanting to do at the same time. But as far as like personal burnout, I guess I personally have like had the feeling and like trying to like take my own advice, which is hard to do sometimes. I tell other people to like manage like expectations around like being able to feel like I can do what I've done in a day and there's tomorrow and we're just going to keep working at it again. So that's kind of what I've been trying to like take what I can manage, and it's okay to take a step back and like pause and be like, let's revisit this when I feel like I have the energy to do that again.
100%. I literally agree with everything you just said. And I think it's also like just another great way to like model that kind of workspace for the interns. You know, like we want the interns to also like see that we as staff can like take a step back and be like, okay, I need to like reassess or like check my like heart and my mind, and you know, like check in with myself, because we want them to do the same throughout their entire process here too, and their journey in all of our programs. So totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. Oh my gosh. As you could tell, I'm very ecstatic about our conversation and just the work that y'all do. And one of the questions that just popped up in my head while y'all were talking about relationship building is, how do you maintain relationships after the interns and the students and the youth graduate out of the program? What is there like an alumni network? Is there anything like that?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different avenues the interns can kind of come back and continue to like work with us or just stay in the network. So we have an alumni program, which we'll definitely get into. And then we also have alumni positions on staff. So I'm just gonna like, so for example, there was an intern that kind of started when I started, And this intern was a freshman and went through the cook program all 4 years and then came back as a staff member. So like went from just working in the program to now like he's in the staff meetings and he's also developing the program because he was an intern in it. And so there are alumni positions in every program. So, you know, folks who go through it can have a position afterwards. And then if that's not their jam and they don't necessarily want to like work with, you know, like on the team, like throughout the summer and the year, we also have alumni programming that offers different certifications that are like really great for a resume and just offer like, you know, like gathering and like time to connect with each other and like see how we're doing or like connect them with places that they want to get jobs or they want to like network in with. Do you have any other things to say about the alumni program? Or
Yeah, I really, I oversee our alumni program with one of our alumni staff is coordinating it currently too. And what we do for kind of those workshops that Saba was talking about was we do survey alumni for their feedback on what things are, what do they want to learn and what feels relevant for them, especially in a rapidly changing kind of work environment and work culture. Post mid-COVID, I guess. I don't know. But we do stipend those for alumni that are participating as well because their time is valuable and they should be compensated for that. And with the alumni positions as well, like the ones that are on our staff, we have like the alumni positions that are kind of seasonal and they come back every year to serve as those mentors, and we provide opportunities for them to like explore projects that like they're interested and passionate about to grow those skills. Like Michael works on the website. Yeah, he wanted to do a really cool recipe index that youth interns who have developed recipes are going to put on there for like the great wide world to see. And I've never seen someone arrange such a talented Excel spreadsheet.
beautiful spreadsheet.
It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
You're like, Michael, how do you do it?
Yeah. And then there's also, as staff positions open up at Urban Roots too, the first place we look is our alumni pool. And we are advertising those first to alumni because who knows the program better than alumni and knows what the program needs. So I think right now we have like 5 alumni who are in positions, like permanent staff positions right now with us.
I love that. Oh my gosh.
That's a good question. Yeah.
I'm just too excited. Oh my goodness.
The energy.
I know, the energy's good.
Taking a bit of a right turn, one of the things we want to go in depth today about is the intersection between immigrant, migrant, and refugee health and food justice. So in your eyes, what does this intersection look like and how does it relate to food justice?
Well, yeah,
that's a good one.
This is a good question. I definitely can speak to, you know, like the food justice piece because a lot of our, well, you know, like we are centered and focused on the east side of St. Paul, and we work with youth who live here and go to school here. And so of the 80 young folks who come to work with us, they're kind of split in these across these 3 programs, right? So conservation, market garden, and cook fresh. And in cook fresh, I mean, there's a lot of what you're talking about across all programs, but just speaking to cook fresh specifically right now, we do a lot of, you know, like recipe development and also like learning how to make nutritious, sustainable meals that are like also seasonal, but also represent like who we are as people. So there's that. And then we also want to connect our youth to different chefs across the Twin Cities. And so it's really cool because a lot of the chefs that we bring in are people who either like have a similar backstory or like look like us or the interns. And it's just a really cool way to like give back on both sides. So you'll have a chef come in and tell their story and talk about how their journey into food. And then they'll share a recipe that utilizes some of the produce from our farm. And they make a meal for like 80 people, you know, and all those 80 people being like the interns and staff and also guests too. So 80 plus. And that is just a really like, I think a good picture to kind of talk about how the interns get to see their choice in like, oh, we get to like grow this food and we get to cook it and we get to like be in our power to like choose what meal we're making. and share our story that way. We're also doing like a food stories project this winter that is like a really awesome, another great depiction of like, I think, food justice, because it's also giving voice to our neighbors and the people who have worked with us in the past, or people who we're getting to know through this process. And so these food stories are across like different cultural groups on the east side of St. Paul, and their stories of how they like either came to these recipes or what these recipes mean for them, and or maybe these recipes are like native to them, and then they share them. And actually, in like I think a few weeks here, we're gonna do like a cooking demo with all of the guests who decided to share a recipe with us with our interns. So it'll be like intergenerational, but also like cross-cultural, and then we'll get to have these conversations about where these food stories come from, which I feel like in food justice, sharing about where food comes from and what food means to you is a huge piece about it, right? Because it's like, you don't want those stories to be lost. I think when stories are lost, that is like a huge avenue for injustice. So we want to keep the stories alive and like be loud about them and like continue the conversations. Yeah. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think too, and there's ways that we plan on kind of linking that, because we do have like our community outreach as well. So one of the ways, I talked about our mobile farmers market earlier, but we do have its sibling, which is the mobile demonstration kitchen. And so it's an 18-foot concession trailer that's outfitted as a commercial teaching tool for nutrition literacy. And I think what's really valuable about these stories is we'll have them printed along with like their story, the individual story, as well as like the recipe on the back, and folks are able to shop like market style for those ingredients while we have like demonstrations going about like how to adapt cultural recipes, because food itself is so universal. Like take the dumpling, for example. Like a dumpling, like there's one, like an example of it across like a bunch of different cultures.
Yeah.
So like there's links that we're making for that. But also it's about like when we look at our other programs as well, like the market garden program, like talking about like how do we do like our crop selection every single year. And that's about like working with our youth interns who are community members and are representative of the like folks who are living here, and like getting food that like is meaningful to them into homes and into the homes of their neighbors. And then like making sure that like when we're doing all of this, like how are we like farming in a way that's sustainable and also hitting like on like in practices environmental justice as well, because we know that like agriculture itself has done immense amount, like a Western view of agriculture has done like a lot of intensive harm in soil health, for example, like in industrial farming. So like how do we view that, and like how do we like bring those topics up? So another really cool project we're working on this year with like some of our partners from culturally specific nonprofits like Clues and the American Indian Family Center. We are paying their participants to do culturally specific crop areas that are growing specific crops that are meaningful, and those will go directly into food distribution that we do. But then also like working with our youth interns to like figure out like different ways of farming from like emerging farmers who already have a lot of that like incredible knowledge and history and skill, but often like is discounted and like not considered like a valuable and like a traditional like Western like European view of farming, which isn't how it's done as like the child of like migrant farmers myself. Like it's I think really beautiful to see like how that series is kind of going to develop over this summer.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like all of the work that we're talking about is just very important in our communities, and especially this aspect of storytelling, you know, it carries who you are and kind of gives your background and where you come from and all that. So I feel like that's obviously something we've talked about here, and we've also talked about in our health justice and advocacy course. So could you guys touch a little bit on why exactly you choose to make storytelling such a big part of your work, and maybe some of the advantages you see using storytelling and all the things that come with that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, you know, we sort of like touched on it, but I mean, just even go in depth, like I think like so much information through time has been like continued on through storytelling. And I think it's really like, you know, whenever you're sharing information, right, it's like, what am I going to listen to? Somebody being like, okay, like this, or they're like, I have a story to tell you, or I have like tale old as time to tell you about. So I think that one, storytelling is just interesting and really like easy to like hear, and like is also like there's more empathy in that process. But also it's a really creative way to like talk about food and talk about growing food and like conservation work. And also I think in storytelling, a lot of our interns get to see themselves in it and also like, you know, create their own stories because it's a creative process. So, you know, like I'm just gonna keep talking about food because the cook program, but you know, with food recipes, like whenever we have chefs come in, I actually saw Northern Fire's Pizza join. I'm like, hey, Ari. But I think with food and like when the interns get to meet chefs, like the first thing they ask these chefs are like, how did you get into food? And I feel like that's a prompt for a story. And then like you hear these chefs talk about their own like journey in food, whether it's like, oh, like I grew up and my mom always made this dish, or I was born here and now living in this state, whenever I smell saffron, it reminds me of home, and I just like had to continue cooking that. You know, there's just so many avenues for how a lot of the chefs we've come across got into cooking. And I think in all these different stories, the youth see themselves in it and are empowered to also like to make their own stories in food, which I feel, you know, we feel super lucky to even be a part of that story, right? Because like we're cooking together, we're growing the food together. But yeah, I think just the ability to like see yourself in a story through food is huge and creates space for, you know, a really big future. So yeah,
I would agree. I think like just adding on to that, like representation does matter. And when we work with youth who are from different cultural backgrounds where there's an emphasis, not necessarily on written history, but oral history in itself, making sure that's represented too, because the way that like our educational system works, and also as an educator myself in a previous life, and a social studies educator particularly. So for middle school students previously, it's about like making sure that history isn't lost and like stories are still there. And especially with cultures like Hmong culture, for example, where a lot of like language is more it's verbal and it's often told through storytelling versus like written history, or Native American or First Nations folks for history as well. Like we want to make sure like that's represented in, because that's where our youth interns are and seeing themselves within the work that they do.
I love it. I love it so much. The very fact that like food is intimate, right? And food can be political and food can represent so much to all of us is like such a like thing we overlook as people. And so I really just love this like mindful approach to all the programs y'all do. One question that is popping up in my head is like, are there any barriers that your students face or like from those who participate in these projects, and they're like, what are some of like the specific hands-on projects as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually all youth that are enrolled in our program have either a significant barrier to employment or qualify for free and reduced lunch. And barriers to employment include like a variety of different things. It could be youth that are from New American families or are participating in ELL, like English language learner courses, or have an IEP or a 504, or have other challenging life experiences that make it harder to have a traditional track to employment. So often it's being like mindful, and I think that's where like again we visit like relationships and why those are so important for long-term success for youth, is that we are investing in like our youth as people, and like as the fact that they're like incredible humans that are going to go on and like shape the future of like our communities, and making sure that like they have the shot to do that. And that they're empowering themselves to make those changes moving forward that they want to see. And kind of like what services we offer like includes kind of that content specific work within each program. So Saba's kind of mentioned like the really cool things that Cook Fresh do, but our urban agriculture program, Market Garden, does a lot of work around like entrepreneurship, and that's like running our 55-member CSA program, operating the mobile farmers market, running a farmers market stand at Mill City, but then also doing work with like our community garden program. We have 22 plots at one garden, and we have acquired a new community garden this year that we're super excited about to open up to community members. So talking about like land stewardship and land access. And then our conservation program does a whole lot of environmental justice work and restoration on the east side of St. Paul at a lot of different parks, and in partnership with Lower Phelan Creek Project, which is an incredible Native-led nonprofit on the east side. We have an Indigenous medicine garden, and then we do a lot of like pollinator and rain garden like installation and design, macroinvertebrate work with like watershed, those types of things. So a lot of like content specific, but our youth are also kind of doing like courses and like setting them up for success for post-secondary education and employment. So career exploration, developing resumes and cover letters, informational interviewing. We're also looking at like their social emotional development. So like, are they becoming more confident? Are they learning how to collaborate with their peers and adults that they're working with? And things like that. But then also, there's one other good one, like certifications as well. So like we're looking at like ServSafe, First Aid AED, pallet jack, OSHA safety. Like it's things like a lot of really like practical skills, but then also like content knowledge and then social emotional development. So it's a little bit of like everything to help them like move forward and like start that path towards a successful future.
I love it. I just love it so much.
Yeah, I feel like
Type person. I'm like, yes.
yeah, I feel like you guys touch on a little bit of everything over there at Urban Roots, and I think that is so awesome, and all of the work you guys are doing obviously does not go unnoticed. But just to tie this all up, how can we support you guys in your work, and maybe what's a call to action for us and everyone that is watching this video, and what can we do?
That's a great question. I would be remiss if I wouldn't talk about our Earth Day cleanup event coming up on April 23rd. We are the host at Sweet Hollow Park for the St. Paul Citywide Cleanup, and we would love to see y'all there. On our website, we have a whole page dedicated to Earth Month that we celebrate for the month of April. Saba, do you have anything else?
You know, we in the summertime we have so many fun events, and so I mean, just honestly to add on to what Hayley said, like come to our events, like go up or like yeah, just because you know in the summer I think we're gonna have a couple like pop-up dinner nights and things like that. And we'll have like we have a couple things in the books. I think they're on our website.
Yep,
right.
They're absolutely on the website.
Yeah, so come and check it out because it's really fun and a great way to see like what we do in action.
Yeah, and finally, like for different like groups, we do take volunteer groups as well. So if your workplace or if your class would like to come in and join us on the farm or at one of our conservation sites, we would love to have you. We also do service learning as well. So if anybody has kiddos that they have relationships with in school, like we love to work with grades K through 12 too, to like help learn more about like all of the areas that we work in.
Awesome. Well, unfortunately, I'm very disheartened, but I'm disheartened because the time is up. But unfortunately, we have to end things up here. But thank you so much for coming and speaking with us. Like, much gratitude and appreciation for answering all the emails and everything like that from us and keeping everything in line and all that. But yes, thank you so much for speaking with us today. And just a little announcement for all of our audience members, be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook and tune in for our next spotlight on immigrant and refugee and migrant health. And yeah, thank you for tuning in and thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
It
you
was
both.
super fun. Went by really
It was quick.
yeah.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.